Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. On today's show, Gates was just recently on the Jimmy Fallon show, and he made sort of a bold claim. And he said in the next 5 to 10 years, AI could outperform your doctor or even your child's teacher. So, it may sound like a little bit of sci-fi now because of where we know AI is, but we know also we're not far off based on things we'll talk about on the show today, like Amigo and other things that are happening in the medical world. So we know that AI is already diagnosing diseases and tutoring students and so on and so forth. And LLMs are getting smarter. And now we have the multimodal systems coming online, understanding speech and images and even emotions. Really, the gap is closing fast, and we can see that. So is it 5 to 10 years away? Is Bill right? That's what we want to talk about today. And if he is right, if it's 3 years away, just because AI can replace your doctor or your students or your child's teacher, should it? So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Like, what is the role of the machine and AI in the future in this particular instance? So that's the idea. Today's the Daily AI show. Today is April 14th, 2025. With me today, we have Beth, Junmi, Andy, and I'm Brian. And I think this is a good Monday conversation. We talk about, like, we sort of line up our week about what's Mondays and Thursday conversations and things like that. But this feels like a good, honest Monday conversation. And if you guys are cool with it, I thought, well, the easiest thing to do here to start off with, if I can just find it, because I pulled it in a different screen here, is literally just show the YouTube clip of Bill Gates talking on Jimmy Fallon. If you guys are cool with that, let's just hear what he has to say, and then we can kind of kick off the conversation if you guys are cool with that. So let me pull that up right now. I think it's like a 2-minute clip, so it shouldn't be too terribly long in here. Okay, here we go. We'll turn up the volume all the way. Oh no.
The era we've come to is sort of the vision that computing was expensive and it basically became free. The era that we're just starting is that intelligence is rare, a great doctor, a great teacher. And with AI, over the next decade, that will become free, commonplace, great medical advice, great tutoring. And it's kind of profound because it solves all these specific problems, like we don't have enough doctors or, mental health professionals. But it brings with it kind of so much change. What will jobs be like? Should we, just work like 2 or 3 days a week? So I love the way it'll drive innovation forward, but I think, it's a little bit unknown. Yeah. Will we be able to shape it? And so legitimately, people are like, wow, this is a bit scary. It's completely new territory.
I mean, will we still need humans?
Not for most things. We'll decide.
I mean, hosting a talk show, definitely. You're gonna need, really?
Well, we'll decide, like baseball. We won't want to watch computers play baseball.
That's correct. Yeah.
And, so there'll be some things that we reserve for ourselves. But in terms of making things and moving things and growing food, over time, those will be basically solved.
Okay, I'll stop it there because it goes a little bit longer, I believe. But the main part is what we wanted to really have the conversation today. So I guess he doesn't say 5 to 10 years. That was the that was the article that I read, and I think he said decade. He didn't say 5 to 10 years. Excuse me. But let's even use that, the decade, which, I mean, in AI speak, in the AI world, that's forever and a day if you're talking about the next 10 years, because we didn't have any of this to talk about in terms of general AI 3 years ago. None of it. So everything that we've seen so far clearly has come to play really in the 3 years. As far as the general public, I know somebody's, but hold on a second, Brian. GPT-1 existed. Yes, I know that. But I just mean in terms of November 2022, when the world woke up to the possibilities of what LLMs can do through ChatGPT and others like it. That's kind of where we always use it. So we're not even at that 3-year mark yet. We're not even close. We're at the 2.5-year mark, maybe. So let's just start there. 10 years, 2035. Is Bill right? Will we need doctors? Will we need teachers? Not should we, but will we? based on the current trajectory of AI. I don't know, Jimmy, what do you think on this one? Because I kind of feel like this gets into sci-fi side, and I feel like I'm going to like your answer to this.
I think I think that we will probably have the technology. It'll be technically possible to have a full AI or embodied doctor or teacher and things like that. I don't think we will replace it or transition to that in 10 years. I think the natural human resistance to that process and the ability to understand and you know, cross that technical and societal gap, that'll probably take more than 10 years unless there's specific catalysts that happen. Um, because I think the larger question, and we'll definitely be discussing this, is terms of trust. You know, how is it implemented? When you say doctor and teacher, that's like these are roles that deal with people on a personal basis and deal with the education, growth, and legitimate like health issues of people. So that's going to be a huge issue. But we can definitely have I think we can have the technology in 10 years. Um, I foresee a more hybrid approach in 10 years. I would say we could see some form of AI in all the tools that medical professionals and educators will be using in 10 years time. And you know, some could argue that that's the that's what they mean by, oh, it'll be diagnosing, it'll be you know, performing procedures, or laying out education plans, things like that. But I think the big realization is there's going to be dramatic shifts. How that's going to play out in 10 years time, because you're right, 10 years time is a long time in the AI world, but
10
that's
years is
not a long
before
time for people.
10 years is before some future doctor has started any school towards a medical degree, right? Isn't
Right.
that about right? I mean, it's maybe 8 years. I'm not sure. What is it? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
there's usually 8 years of medical school
8.
and then a
Wait,
few
is that
years
after
of
college?
residency and all those kinds of things.
All right, hold on. If any of you know this better than me, because I'm not, I don't know any doctors immediately in my family. Is that college and then everything after, or is that post college, post degree?
Oh, that's well past your undergraduate.
So to become a surgeon, a general surgeon, I don't to go more than that, because I know that we're saying that's 8 years past college at least.
Hmm. I think it's
No.
8 years, including college.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's your undergraduate and
Gotcha.
your master's
So
oh,
Plus residency.
past undergraduate or graduate courses, I should say.
So it's possible that there's a junior in high school ish high school who would be a surgeon in 10 years, right? Like if we extrapolated and went out there, whatever. My point to this anyway, it doesn't matter, by the way. We could the dates don't matter. What my whole point to it was just like the hypothetical of there's a student today who might be hybrid replaced, partially replaced, or completely replaced in terms of their knowledge and ability if we have precision robots. You actually said embodied, which I mean, I don't know that Bill said embodied or whatever, but that takes it to a whole other level. Do we have humanoid robots that are also intelligent? Which I mean, there's that level of it too. I was actually just going to like your Kumba arms, like you already have your surgical robot hands that I don't know what kind of procedures, minimally invasive maybe, with surgeons that can do it remotely. They're basically looking
Yeah.
at manipulating joysticks that manipulate hands in another part of the world. And we've heard of these types of stories. Okay. You said trust. Okay. How many successful surgeries does it take with hands that can't sneeze, that are always going to move with precision, that aren't going to like get sidetracked by, having a fight with their significant other earlier in the day, yada, 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 all these things. And also the AI and knowledge to know immediately due to vision, AI vision, before maybe a bleed becomes a big problem, before maybe there was a snip or clip, or as it's looking in a particular part of the body and it's doing the surgery faster than any human could perceivably pick up on the scenario going on. It also is connected and has all the vital signs, and not just today's vital signs. Let's just assume that there is now a host of other biometric feedback coming back about the patient that wasn't maybe previously available. And it's got all of that near instantly. Go for it, Beth.
If that's true, then there's no point in the human having the gloves that control that, right? If the system is programmed to respond quickly,
yeah.
I don't think in 10 years we're going to be in a place where we want no humans with no control in the room. But the other piece of this is that we are nearing a place where learning is a premium, and we're going to lose, I think, a generation or two because we haven't figured out the learning in this. Matt Bean wrote a book called The Skill Code, and in it he talks about the challenge that was happening. Like, that was a couple of years ago, when that research was being done. That, like, it used to be when the option was you were going to be a human unassisted surgeon. You got to practice on appendectomies because if something went wrong, it wasn't horrific, right? And the likelihood that something could go wrong for anyone was like, okay, yeah, that's something that can happen. These are good environments in which to build skill. But if you, as the surgeon, teaching surgeon, have the ability to use these tools, and therefore the likelihood that something could go wrong within all the technology is much lower. There's a much lower threshold for willingness for something to go wrong with anything. Sorry, and that creates a training problem.
I want to thread off of that with your suggestion that learning is an issue. Let's remember that robots are intended to learn dynamically from all the other robots that are operating in rooms everywhere. Like, and I don't mean that to be an operating room, but everywhere that robots operate, they can share information about what they're learning. And we have a very small bandwidth by comparison. Any one surgeon has a very small bandwidth of learning. They have to practice it themselves or observe someone else doing it in a very, very slow and almost antiquated fashion compared to robotic surgery. So now, having said that, I'll say I think there's a distinction between all those things that really require sort of cognitive and expressive roles for doctors, and what the artificial intelligence can do in the healthcare environment. So let me paint that distinction. So all the things that have to do with diagnosis and treatment, those don't really require, once a course of treatment is, diagnosis is analyzed and a course of treatment is established, that doesn't require a deep level of cognition. But AI is capable of doing all of those cognitive tasks very, very well, right? And that AI doing that cognition is going to avoid the gaps and biases that a single human doctor might have in arriving at the right course of action. So in answer to the question, do I trust AI to deal with my healthcare? My answer is a resounding yes. I think that these things will be far more effectively trained and much better at making diagnostic and treatment decisions for my body than any one doctor could be. But now there's another role that everybody wants to retain for human doctors, and that is, the bedside manner, explaining what the situation is for you now that the diagnosis is done. And, I want to just say, today in the medical systems, you can get all the same diagnostic results, all the imagery, all the test results in your patient portal through the EHR system, right? The electronic health record system. So unless your medical providers are different from mine, I can now, just a couple of days after my visit and my blood draws and my examinations, I can get an after action report from that, and it's detailed. And I can now give that to ChatGPT or Gemini 2.5 and say, explain this to me. And now I have a very recent experience of having had a doctor explain an imaging examination that I recently had. And that doctor really shortcut the explanation pretty seriously now in retrospect. I think in part because, the doctor didn't see any really great, concern that had to be expressed to me as a human, but didn't go into the details in a way that I want. I have a more demanding intellectual expectation about what information is going to be shared with me by the doctor. But the report that came through on the patient portal, I gave to ChatGPT, and I had a conversation with ChatGPT that gave me far more information about what was actually represented in the doctor speak, that the imagery analysis was done by the radiologist. And I was very satisfied with that. In retrospect, not satisfied with what the doctor told me. And in fact, I think that shortcut that doctor took, who knows why, had another patient he had to go see, whatever the interruptions were, that was really giving me short shrift in that exchange. So I'm increasing my confidence in and my expectation that AI, and especially robotic AI, will enable. And when I say robotic, I don't just mean the humanoid robots that are implementing treatment programs, but I mean the robots that are accomplishing the learning process across a vast population of other robots who are similarly collecting data and sharing it for that purpose. So long as we assume that the medical systems are going to connect them in that way so that they do learn in this advantageous way that human doctors cannot. They don't have time, and in addition to all their practice, to go and study the journals.
I 100% agree with everything you're saying, Andy. And Cisco had a similar story in the comments about having an improved experience using ChatGPT, working with a doctor. And said, in fact, the doctor was like, how do you know this? And I think back to maybe, oh God, we were probably doing this show, but it was when ChatGPT was out. But I had to get I was getting numbness in my fingers. And anyway, I was talking to a surgery place about, look, is there compression in the disc and da. Super nice. He actually had good bedside manner. I mean, we were in his office, but he had a good bedside manner, and he stepped out. He's like, I really have to take this call for this other patient. No problem. I swear it'll only be a few minutes. And I probably told this story on the show a year and a half ago, but I just ChatGPT on my app, and I was like, what questions should I be asking the doctor? I have him here right now. What questions do I need to be asking to better understand what's going on? He comes back in, and of course I was like, all right, are you ready? Because I've had 5 minutes, and in my 5 minutes, I've leveled up. And I was joking with him, and I was like, are you ready? And he was like, he was the right type of doctor, right? He kind of leaned back in his chair, and he's like, yeah, let's do this. So I was like, here we go. Question 1, question 2. And I literally went down the list, and he could not have been happier to have that level of exchange with me. It really did raise the entire situation. However, Andy, I've had situations like you. In fact, I was smirking when you were talking about bedside manner, because how many stories or interactions have we had in our life, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how many times you've had to be, in a hospital setting or whatever, where there's some story of some genius surgeon, she works there, and everybody knows she's an ass, everybody knows she's a pain, and what? Everybody says like her bedside manner is non-existent. She's also the smartest person in the building by a long shot, and everybody in the hospital knows it. And so this, woman comes in the door, and she's a surgeon, and she's like, bop, 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 bop. And you're like, man, like no bedside manner, no casual anything, but she knows her stuff. And you go, I could have taken that a little bit, like a little bit more apple juice, like if you could have massaged a little bit. However, I fully, trust the knowledge coming from her. And I think AI is going to level that playing field, because the idea of being the smartest surgeon in the building and the stature that holds today may still be a thing, but eventually AI is going to erode that, because even the most junior surgeons are going, even if we're still talking about the human side, are going to have instantaneous access to the best of the knowledge. And to me, it's going to be the surgeons that are willing to embrace this. And I'm not saying it's ChatGPT. There might be some trained language model that's much more adaptable and highly trained and fine-tuned to their particular position. I don't know what that might be, but let's just assume they have it. To me, it's like any other job. The experts that are willing to lean into AI and figure out where it makes a big difference to them, especially with heavy caseloads, I foresee maybe a time where the doctors actually have more time in the room with you, because a lot of what was filling up their day, their busyness, has been taken off their plate. And we're seeing this throughout many other industries where AI, sales, otherwise, is taking busy work off the plate of the professional. And what should that do? Give more time back for human to human conversations. But what should that also do? Really sort of push out the people who had never had bedside manner in the first place and have no business talking to humans. They're an awful human as themselves. Like, we don't want them in the room with the patient. They're not doing anybody any favors just because they happen to be the smartest. You sit over there. We can bring this knowledge to the patient now. You don't even have to be in the building. You don't have to be in this part of the world. That's kind of what makes me excited, is that we're going to level the playing field here a little bit. And it's not going to be who has the haves and haves nots, who lives in the rich city that has the best doctors. You know, even my dad in the Atlanta area, or me in the Tampa area. I don't live in downtown Tampa, but it's probably maybe some of the specialists are going to be in downtown Tampa. And that's a 40-minute drive. My dad in his 70s now has had to go to Atlanta. He doesn't live in Atlanta. He lives outside of Atlanta. And so he has to go see specialists in the city. And I think that's going to start getting washed away here really quick. And what I get excited about is the equity. The equity of we've only talked about healthcare. We could talk about education as well, but the equity for everyone gets me really excited. By the way, I want to make sure everybody knows Carl has also joined us. Hey, Carl.
And Carl, I'm curious, because Cisco actually said, because medical care is a huge part of government expenditures, that might be something that it may become inevitable that AI penetrates. I'm curious, like, do you see it different in Canada versus like universal Medicare places? No, like, you guys don't call it that. Universal healthcare.
Yeah. It's well, it's interesting. There's a we have universal healthcare, but I guess like it isn't just, there's still flaws with it, right? There's like some wait times that, like, so for example, my brother had double shoulder surgery, but for him to actually get it takes a long time, right? Because obviously the system prioritizes the most, like the most pressing, the ones who need it the most. And then, but then who determines that, right? So like, and then there are people who, oh, I don't want to wait, so I'll go pay for a private clinic to do that. So there's that. But yes, definitely universal healthcare. We'd rather take that than anything else that is in the States right now. But there's one thing it's interesting about when you talk about having the best surgeons and whatnot. The thing is, though, I always think, like, I'll take my brother's surgery. Like, luckily he ended up with one of the top people to actually get the microfractures, how his shoulder fixed. And sure, you can have, now I came to the conversation late, so I'm not sure where, how the conversation progressed, but like, I still think that as a person who, let's say, needed the surgery for microfractures on my shoulder, even though said surgeon knows how to do that surgery and maybe is a mid-tier, I'd still prefer the top tier surgeon, because even with like, that person has the experience to actually do the surgery, has done it multiple times. That's very hard to replicate with an AI with you. Like, there's just certain things. For example, in the NFL, everyone goes to Dr. Andrews for ACL or knee or anything like that. Like there's only a couple people who have done it over and over, who've seen it, overseen the rehab, overseen like the different types. So you could have an AI that could tell you that, but it's like, could you actually do not just the pre part of the surgery, the actual surgery, then the post, the rehab? That's really tough for an AI, even if they can download everything from a Dr. Andrews to, whatever that you're using, the experience there, I just I don't know how you replicate that. That's very, very difficult to do.
And so just to bring you up to speed, Carl, so we started by talking about Bill Gates, and Bill Gates said in 10 years, so in a decade. So just curious on your thought here. Like, okay, you're sort of talking about like, could you replicate it today? What's your thoughts on a decade out, 2035? Jimmy was talking about, I don't want to speak for you, Jimmy, but you were talking about perhaps embodied AI, but still saying, I think we're looking at a hybrid approach, even at a 10-year mark. But given everything we've seen in the speed of AI and advancements, do you think Bill Gates is right in the sense of, and it could be 100% of all doctors, because there's always going to be fringe cases, same thing with education. But he was like, AI could replace doctors and teachers essentially in a decade. Do you think we're there? Do you think we can get there given everything we've seen so far? And to Jimmy's point about what we're starting to see with embodied AI and how fast, we're watching robots go from barely being able to stand upright to doing kick flips and dance routines on TikTok,
I don't know, because like I was actually listening to, I forgot what podcast this morning. They were talking to Kevin Wheel, the CPO at OpenAI, and they were talking about how, like, if the first time you get into a Waymo, you're kind of freaked out because it's driverless. You're like, what's going on? Then 5 minutes later, you're like, oh, it becomes natural. Then 5 minutes later, on board. Then he was saying, I was like, if 10 years ago, if GPT-3 landed on our phones, we'd all be like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing. If GPT landed on our phones now, it would be like, this is hot garbage. So I don't know what the adoption would be for people. It just seems it's a lot slower. So things could be there, but it's a lot slower to adopt just because there's so much, I guess the humans are, the slowest piece to adopt that. One of the things I tell people, like whenever I do discovery presentations, even if AI stopped all innovation today, it would still take 5, 7, 10 years to adopt all the stuff that has already come out. So imagine if the pace still continues at the breakneck speed. I don't know how people would just randomly, like, it takes a long time to get not just the adoption, getting past regulation. I think healthcare is one of the toughest pieces to, like, the regulation in healthcare is ridiculous, plus the bureaucracy, plus the administration. Then you have to have people trusting the thing can do whatever the thing can do. And I don't know how long that will be, that people will trust it. And then can everybody pay for it? So to the point where, like, it's natural to just go into a clinic and, get whatever done, and could be, 10 years seems a little bit, for this particular use case, seems a little bit optimistic, I think, just because of adoption, just how the speed of adoption. So you need the tech to get there. Then how do you get people to adopt it? I think how to get people to adopt it is the slowest thing. The tech will get there in 3 years. But
I get your point, but I want to just share something that Justin put up here. So let's just admit that even in our for-profit system down here in the United States, there are long wait times and many denials. You don't get to have the treatment. And that doesn't happen in Canada. So I just want to give kudos to Canada for universal health care. But so how do I take that back off the stream now? So everybody be able to see that. Okay, thank you. So I think that people are going to adopt rapidly because of the constraints on availability of good treatment. And you'll soon be able, I think, well within 5 years, you'll be able to see certain procedures, not all of them across the board, but certain procedures with statistics on here's the robotic option, here's the human surgeon option, here's the wait time for robotics, here's the wait time for surgeons, and here's the statistics on customer satisfaction with the resulting surgery. And my guess is the robotic route is going to be equal to or superior to the human surgeons.
I think you just nailed it, Andy. Honestly, I think you just nailed that. I think that's exactly what I would expect to happen. Take the robot massage. Hey, this guy, Escape. Love the robotic massage. It was awesome. It was the best. I'm going back to get another one. I've re-upped to it. Guess who's coming with me? My wife, the same person who said, I'm not letting a robot touch me. But when I got out of that robot massage, and I was like, best massage I've had in a long time. You could adjust all this and that. I explained the whole thing. She was on board with it. And we're both going back because it was cheaper around Christmas, blah, blah, blah. And it's just over in Orlando to do it. I get it. That's a massage. There's no invasive procedures happening on that. It's just muscle massage and stuff like that. And I'm also the first to say, not the same thing as a human. Couldn't have really the feedback loop, the easy feedback loop of, could you go a little bit deeper there? I'm really tight over here. And, we weren't able to have that back and forth conversation. But as a general great massage that you could get in a hotel, hey, if I had 2 on a plate and it was like, one is the robotic massage and you can have it in the next 5 minutes, or you're staying at a resort and 3 days from now, you could have this other massage when our masseuses are available. But here is the same feedback, same thing you just said, Andy, just at a lower, threshold of like the seriousness of it, right? The outcome. I'd be like, yeah, I'll just take. It seems like everybody's loving the robot massage. I'll just go with that if I can get it in the next 5 minutes. And I think that's exactly right. I think you nailed it. That's what I would expect. You can here's your 2 options, and the insurance companies are going to get behind that, at least in the States in our messed up system. But they'll get behind that and they'll start offering that because it'll be a means to an end faster and perhaps cheaper for a lot of people in the States. And that's going to be a big deal too. People are going to opt for the thing that's not going to put them in debt.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that expounding on that point, what Justin was saying, what you and Andy were saying, and talking about when you were saying about the equity in having access to the healthcare. I don't think we can stress enough what the benefits will be for people to have this option. But I think it definitely is a potential. It's a potential equity or equalizing factor. It's a potential option for us. But I think if we're talking about that, adoption if that is the largest hurdle, then if it's readily available and inexpensive or provided as part of your provided healthcare, I like to use that word instead of free because nothing is free, then you will see far more adoption. Why? Just because people are like, I can do this, or I can wait and pay a ton for this other method. That's what's going to get that adoption. That's what's going to get that acceptance. So yeah, I'm in alignment with all of you on that. If it's run the way that things are run now, it will take time because that'll be seen as a markup. It's like, oh, you want to try the new, better, more experienced, knowledge-based thing. Yeah. And that comes down to alignment of how we all look at healthcare and what should, be provided healthcare for, your peoples and all those kinds of things,
But does this then get you to a place where like there's much more robust sensors, like when you go into a pharmacy or a grocery store, they have the like sit here, get your blood pressure tested by the it is a robot, but doesn't have a head, right? It's just a cuff that that you can like get your measurement. Will we be moving toward a situation where in my minute clinic, I can do a series of tests, right? Like stand here, right? Like scan me. I don't know what you're doing. Do the thing. Scan me. Like uh, like I'm gonna bleed on you and spit on you. I don't know that that's like the best idea, but you understand what I mean. Like, am I going to be able to kind of go through an automation series so that then when I'm seeing the doctor or the nurse practitioner or whoever, like whatever level that is, physician's assistant, that there's information right then? Or if I'm not seeing them, do I get like the little printout that says, hey, there's some numbers here that we just, do you have questions? Because I'd like to talk to you about it from that kind of sensor experience.
I think you can hit each form, and you can like when we talk about the capabilities of how we can interact and have personalized experiences, right? We can choose or we can be determined what based upon our profile analysis and psychological breakdown and all of these other medical aspects. We're just talking about like surgeries and standard medicine. But if we come in and through a series of basic interactions we get tagged with, oh hey, this person is going to want to do a more interactive, well, there comes the computer human interface that says, oh, I'm here to answer any questions you might have. Most often people in this situation have these kinds of questions. Can we start from there? That kind of thing. Or other people would be like, I'm here for 5 minutes. Give me my printout so I can just take it and run, that kind of thing. And so those personalized experiences is what's going to determine the level of overall customer satisfaction, is being able to provide the level of healthcare that is needed, plus in a manner that best aligns with the individual. And who can tell them all that? Our personal AI. We'll just put our phone on the NFC pad, and it'd be like, oh hey, yeah, this is how my person would like to be interacted with. Oh, okay, cool. And just go through that whole process. Yeah, there isn't a touch point that there won't be some level of interaction. There's going to be the backdrop AI that's going to run more supply chain logistics, larger kinds of things. There's going to be the embodied AI, and that doesn't mean human. That's like the Da Vinci robot, like they were talking about in the chat, which is a bunch of robot arms, right? And I think Brian, you mentioned this too, right? Well, just slap an AI brain in there, and that's embodied AI. It's right. The newer version, right? So, I think there's just going to be this, and we'll say within the time frame of 10 years, there's going to be this option for AI to touch upon various pieces of all of the medical industry. The technology will be there. How much a human wants to engage with it is directly determined by how much they see it too. If you've got AI that's handling 90% of all the background stuff that people who like go into the ER just don't know, see, or understand how a hospital or medical facility run, they won't care. What people imagine when they talk about replace your doctor or replace your teacher is the person that's in the room, right? What that level of interaction is, and that's the hardest part to adopt and fill that gap, right? There's also questions about things like I mentioned, supply chain. Well, we've seen over the last few years that having a single point of failure or a very finely tuned supply chain where one link goes away can bring down systems and cause hardships for millions or billions of people. That would be one of my concerns in terms of rapidly just relying on the AI in whole, right? We need to have some sort of parallel or interactive development so we don't lose the knowledge and the experience. And I think Carl was talking about this a little bit too. But do we hold ourselves back from being able to take advantage of that massive amount of information and experience as more and more AI is performing these things like Andy said. So it's not, I don't think it's definitely not a cut and dry issue, but I think it's that we have to find that aligned path through this morass of all of these other issues. And right now, introducing AI isn't going to necessarily solve the inherent issues with our methods now, right? Our medical system is not ideal. We compare it right now for the US medical system versus the Canadian medical system, just because Carl's here. And, you know, we're seeing how that conversation's constantly happening. Why universal healthcare versus not universal healthcare, and the pros and cons of those kinds of things. So throwing AI in the mix, unless the AI is designed to fix a particular problem, it's just going to give us more opportunities. But what do we do with it? You know, and are we going to allow ourselves to take advantage of those potential offerings that AI could do for us, or is it just going to be more of the same?
So I hear you, and I think you make a lot of good points. I guess where I go to with this is, first of all, let me give a quick shout out to everybody in the chat who left Albuquerque when I talked about getting robotic massages and went on a whole innuendo deep end. Has quoted Austin Powers, Fletcher, and others. Beth, way to go with jumping in there with your own innuendo as the Daily AI show. Whole side chat going on as part of this thing. Beth, don't even claim you didn't do it on purpose. I know. You're the only one typing in the chat as the show, and I saw what you wrote. You're not backing away from that now. Beth's like, anyway, you want to be part of the chat? Join the show live. Come over to YouTube, and you can be part of the chat. But we'll leave that where it is because we don't have time for that. But anyway, I thought it was funny. You guys are hysterical in the chat. I love you guys. What I was going to say, Jimmy, back to what you were saying, because I was listening to what you're saying, and this is ultimately where I go with this. And this is like maybe where to take this in the last few minutes of this show before we wrap up. We historically, because we have no other way to look at this, have put certain careers, and we've sort of talked about healthcare this whole time, but it doesn't matter. We can get at healthcare. Take any industry where collectively as humans, we would take a position, and because of the time it would take and the investment of time, capital in general, to hit this certain level, we put them up on a pedestal, and rightfully so. The best surgeons in the world, the best teachers in the world, the best painters in the world, or sculptors in the world, or insert whatever that is. And more times than not, what we're doing is we're saying, oh, that's impressive because the amount of years of experience they have. That's impressive because the amount of years of education they have, or some combination of it, or how many successful outcomes they've had, how much people love them, whatever the metrics are on it. But is this really any different than walking into McDonald's and being impressed with an AI experience in McDonald's and saying, wow, I had a really great experience with getting my burger. And I know there was one human in the loop here that was kind of keeping the whole thing running. But generally speaking, the robots in the back made my burger, and the AI in the front helped me make my order. And I walked away with a McDonald's hamburger, and it tastes hot, and I got it pretty quickly, and it's exactly like it looked in the picture. And I'm really, really happy with that. But we only give that so many way to go points in AI because we go, you taught a robot arm to flip a burger. That's impressive, I guess. It's a Kumba arm. I get it, whatever it is. But isn't it the same thing? I guess that's my question to you guys. Isn't it the same thing? Aren't we just saying, 10 years, a doctor, a surgeon? Oh, isn't that because of our own limitations of what we perceive as hard as what we perceive as taking years and years and years of experience to do that, despite the fact that we know between digital twins and AI environments and all these things, and everything Andy pointed out about all the AI is good as all the other AI. So you're sort of getting, you would assume, instant like upgrades along the way. Are you worried about like hallucinations and things? Maybe there's a blockchain type situation that prevents that, so that there's no malice or bad actors getting involved in, telling the robot doctors to slice the artery. Like there's checks and balances in that system. But whether it's education or whether it's healthcare or otherwise, my question is, isn't it really all the same thing? It's just that we still have these really high levels that we as humans go, oh, that's impressive because of what we know as humans it would take. If I wanted to start to be a surgeon at 47, it's not impossible, but there's a good chance I'm not touching anybody till 60 or whatever. And I go, oh, do I want to put in that kind of time and money and all that? But AI is going to solve for that the same way. And we will see the natural progression from McDonald's or whatever you want to put at the bottom, simple, easy, to surgeon. There'll be stepping stones along the way through the Waymos and everything else. So by the time it comes to robot surgery, we'll have done all the things that were before that in our lives, which would have definitely prepared us to be much, much more okay with AI being in our lives and doing these increasingly more invasive and serious things. I would imagine, though, a car driving is more serious than a robot surgeon. So I kind of think it's backwards anyway, because it's way more serious for me to be in a driverless car.
I don't think so, because
What?
I've had people I've had people who the surgery has gone wrong and they have died. So that to me,
By human.
by human.
Yeah,
So
sure.
but like that's why the benchmark for driverless cars is so much higher. Like if you compare how many accidents said human versus driverless car, I think there was there's a higher threshold that the driverless car has to meet. Like it more so public perception and the feeling of safeness across. In fact,
Sure.
if you have driverless cars in Calgary, I'm not sure it'll work just because of what it is right now in terms of the weather component. Like we get through terrible weather components. I'm not sure how we would react to that, and it hasn't been tested yet.
Sure.
I think it's like the public, you have to get into the public trust of, hey, this thing can do it, not at 99%, at 99.99999% that there will be no deaths or any, because all it takes is one, and you know how one will be amplified 100-fold. Like that will be amplified, and then you'll have the regulations will come in, like because that one thing will be ridiculous, will be showcased throughout whatever it would be.
But
that
in the example of autonomous driving, autonomous cars already exceed human drivers in their safety.
That's what I mean.
And the same will happen for AI systems.
The standard
but
is so
but
high.
we do want, as humans, we want to make sure that these like unfeeling, unsensing, unconscious robots, they need to have the 99999 in order for us to have full trust in them. I understand that part, but I want to do a little quick thought experiment here. Let's suppose that, by some strange thing, all the expert doctors in the world were suddenly catching the same virus and all passed away. They're all gone. Now, as society, we have to figure out how to replace that service. And could we begin training humans who have inherently slow adoption of knowledge and slow adoption of experience? Or would we accelerate our efforts to create a robotic army of healthcare providers of all types? And which one would accomplish more faster? I think the robotic route is the one that you would take, because humans just learn slowly. And I'll use myself as an example of this. Everything that I've learned and everything that I've experienced in the world of business management, entrepreneurialism, etc., is already being obviated by the more comprehensive experience and knowledge of AI. Any question that you could ask me, considering me an authority in any of those domains, you could equally ask one of the AI frontier models, and you'd get more instantaneous and more thorough analysis than I could possibly provide. So we're being deprecated when it comes to these services, including health, including education. It's already been established by studies at Harvard that you provide an AI tutor to students and they immediately accelerate beyond the class components who are not using the AI tutors, right? Now, does that mean that we're not going to have teachers anymore? No, but they're going to have a different role. And they're not going to be the ones we depend on to hold the knowledge, to learn that knowledge painstakingly over their investment, a huge dollar investment, by the way, in becoming a PhD in a subject, right? We're not going to depend on that anymore. There's going to be a very different and facilitative role for the other softer components of the learning process. That's my opinion. And similarly, when it comes to having the council of experts that you deal with at the highest levels of strategy and execution in business operations, I think we're going to count on AI to a larger degree than we do the slash and burn domineering white males who have taken the positions of CEOs in our companies historically. That's just not going to work anymore.
As long as we maintain the alignment that we want to see, because those with power spend most of their time maintaining such power. But I'll leave that there. But to comment on the AI side, or on the hypothetical of all of our doctors going away and building on the AI. I agree with you, Andy, on for the most part in that situation. But it can happen on the other side, and I think that kind of goes back to the no single point of failure. We need to maintain our own knowledge base so that people can fall back on people if they need to. But to answer your question, Brian, I agree with Carl that I think it's a little bit of sticker shock. There is a level of it's impressive because of our own context. Yes, we know that it takes years and years to become a doctor. It takes years and years on top of that to become a great doctor, right? And so because of the context of us as people, there is that element of impressiveness. But I think what it really comes down to when I think about it for me is in those kinds of positions, which I consider more personal positions, right? Because it deals with my specific health and my issues and my life, or my education or my kids' education, and those kinds of things. I'm more in alignment with, or I trust that the human there, the other person who has the same context in life as I do, at least in similar things, we both feel the same kind of emotions, that they're there to help me succeed. They want great outcomes. They want me to be healthier, or they want me to grow in my experience or my knowledge or my education. There is that connection between people, even if it's just a subconscious thing or whatnot. I think that's what a lot of people will feel, and people make choices based on, they make those emotional choices. So when it comes to why it may take longer to to adopt, this is the kind of reason people want to have that level of interaction and be going, okay, this is my doctor. I'm going to see this doctor for years, potentially. This may be my family doctor. I may have multiple generations working with this doctor. That kind of thing we don't see potentially anytime soon that we'll get from an AI. Because unless, consciousness occurs, that AI will not, they'll be able to think of what and read me, and that might be enough for a good portion of the way. But I think inherently people is just going to have an emotional response to it, and they will have to learn to compartmentalize, oh, this much of medicine, totally have no problem. But when it comes down to, I want to talk about my problems with someone and have them have a relationship with me, I think that's a little more of a hitch there. And that's probably what people are on the most, I'd say in general, that kind of response is what people are having to the idea of, oh, you want to replace my doctor? Okay, well, let's have a deeper conversation about that. That seems a little off. That seems like a foreign concept to me.
Well, we're certainly going to be talking about this type of conversation, really even on tomorrow's show. So as we wrap up today, let me tell you what we have coming in this week. Tomorrow, we're talking about news that came out of H&M, talking about how they're using AI models. So not quite the same thing as today in surgeons and education, but still the same concept of it replacing human jobs. What does that mean? We're going to talk about the fashion industry and what we know of how AI is impacting, but just a generally larger conversation about what ChatGPT's 4.0 came out with their image generation and others like it, and how that's drastically changing the landscape of both marketing, but as we're also seeing modeling as well. So that's the conversation tomorrow. Wednesday, we'll have the news. During this week, OpenAI has sort of floated out that they're going to have some drops. I don't know if it'll be like their 12 days of AI or not, or OpenAI, but regardless. So we might do some live reacts along the week. Keep an eye out for that. Those will just happen haphazardly as we sort of decide what announcements they're going to do. And we don't have that knowledge as of right now. Thursday, I know Thursday, I don't know. We have a sort of a flux on Thursday. So we'll figure out what our topic's going to be for there. I know we have some ideas and it may be affected by this week's news as well. And then Friday is our 2-week recap. So we'll be coming on that. Don't forget, you can join our fairly new, only announced last week, brand new community. It's free if you want to join. It's a Slack community, and you can get to it and sign up for it by going to dailyAIshowcommunity.com. That'll take you directly to the Slack login, and you'll see everything there for the Daily AI Show Community Hub join. So you can join the conversation over there if you want to keep it going outside, or if you don't ever get the opportunity to be in our live chats. But when we do the show live at 10 a.m. Eastern every weekday, then this community is a great way for you to connect with everybody in the chat today who are already in there, as well as lots of other people who just don't get a chance to be with us live, which is totally understandable. So come join us there. It's a lot of fun. It's growing. It's great to see the conversations in there. And then, of course, you can go to the dailyishow.com and sign up for our newsletter as well, which just went out, number 45, which just went out yesterday morning. So come take a look at that. All right, that's it. We're going to wrap it up. Have a great day. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about H&M and AI models and whether that's a good thing or bad thing. Till then, guys. Bye.
Aloha.